Hello, you're watching TVP World News. I'm Jonasz Rawiński. Russian leader Vladimir Putin plans to demand Ukrainian territories during his upcoming meeting with US President Donald Trump, according to the Kyiv Independent. A source quoted by the media outlet allegedly working at the office of the Ukrainian president says Kyiv is set to reject any territorial demands.
Reportedly, Putin passed the plan to U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff during his visit to Moscow. Kremlin is to demand full control of Donetsk and Luhansk in exchange for withdrawing its troops from the Zaporizhia and Kherson regions, which at the moment are partly occupied by Russia. The source, quoted by Kyiv Independent, believes the U.S. has de facto already agreed to Putin's territorial demands. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, however, outright rejected the possibility of giving up land, noting that it would be against the Ukrainian constitution.
No decisions about Ukraine without Ukraine. European states surrounding the Baltic Sea reaffirmed their unwavering support for Kyiv's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The statement was released ahead of the Trump-Putin meeting planned for Friday.
The Nordic Baltic 8, consisting of Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Iceland, Latvia, Lithuania, Norway, and Sweden, published a joint statement saying they stand firm with Ukraine in the face of Russia's illegal war of aggression. Quote, "The people of Ukraine must have the freedom to decide their future," the statement reads, underlining that a just and lasting peace requires Ukraine's voice. The Nordic and Baltic states also reiterated that international borders cannot be changed by force, and that any diplomatic solution must safeguard the security interest of both Ukraine and Europe as a whole.
On Sunday evening, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy reiterated his calls for more sanctions and pressure on Russia to bring an end to the war in Ukraine. If Russia does not want to stop the war, then its economy must be stopped, Zelenskyy said.
We clearly understand the threats. All our partners understand the threats just as clearly. Everyone sees that there has been no real step from Russia toward peace, no action on the ground, nor in the air that could save lives. That is why sanctions are needed, pressure is needed, strength is needed. That strength first and foremost of the United States, the strength of Europe, the strength of all nations in the world that want peace and stability in international relations. If Russia does not want to stop the war, then its economy must be stopped.
The European Union's top diplomat Kaja Kallas has called a snap meeting of the bloc's foreign ministers for Monday. The meeting is set to focus on Ukraine and the summit between US President Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. In the run-up to the meeting between the American and Russian leaders, Kallas said that any deal between Washington and Moscow should involve Ukraine and the EU, as it will concern the whole of Europe's security. The bloc's foreign ministers are set to discuss the EU's next steps regarding Ukraine and the Trump-Putin meeting. Kallas added that all temporarily occupied Ukrainian territories should remain with Ukraine. She also warned that any negotiated settlement for Moscow and Kyiv cannot allow for further Russian aggression against Ukraine, NATO or Europe to occur. The meeting will be held online. The ministers are also expected to discuss and review recent developments in the Middle East. Now, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said that Europeans cannot and will not accept any decisions regarding Ukrainian territories being made without Ukraine's involvement. Merz added that he is in regular contact with Trump ahead of his meeting with Putin next Friday, and that Washington is coordinating its moves with the European partners.
I will be having another telephone conversation with President Trump today. We are preparing intensively for this meeting at the European level together with the American government. And we hope and assume that the government of Ukraine, that President Zelenskyy, will be involved in this meeting. In any case, we cannot accept that territorial issues between Russia and America are discussed or even decided over the heads of Europeans and Ukrainians. I assume that the American American government sees it the same way. That is why there is this close coordination that will continue in the coming days. Europeans cannot and must not be mere spectators when it comes to such a crucial strategic issue for the future of Europe. And that is why we hope so. We are working on it. The work being done is truly intensive. Some of my staff have cut short their holidays to make this possible. Yes, I hope so.
Now, ahead of the meeting between Trump and Putin scheduled to take place on Friday, certain concerns have been expressed as to what the final agreement could actually entail for Ukraine and Europe. Now, during an interview for CBS, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said that Friday's meeting with Donald Trump will be a test for Putin and not a new Munich agreement.
The Friday meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump will be a test for Russian President Vladimir Putin, not a new Munich agreement, said NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte in an interview with American television CBS. According to Rutte, the Alaska summit is not meant to bring any solutions, but merely test whether Putin is actually serious about launching the peace process. Any further discussions regarding Ukrainian territories or security guarantees will be taken in cooperation between American and European partners, and Ukraine will have the final say. The diplomat also reiterated that the West would never accept Russia's annexation of Ukrainian territories in legal terms, and that Moscow will not have a say on whether Kyiv can join NATO. However, Rutte also noted that the Friday talks could cover how to deal with the factual situation that the Russians are actually controlling parts of eastern Ukraine.
The leader of Germany's far-right AfD party, Tino Kruppalla, said he does not see Russia as an enemy. The politician has previously called for an end to Russia's sanctions, blamed NATO for Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and even expressed support for Ukraine ceding territories in exchange for peace.
I do not see Russia as an enemy, nor do I agree with Foreign Minister Vadepul when he says Russia is always our enemy and will always remain our enemy. It is precisely this kind of war rhetoric that we must put an end to. In many of the things we are currently seeing in Gaza, in terms of the provision of supplies to civilians, in terms of starving children, in terms of the killing of children, there is no question that crimes are being committed there. And, of course, these crimes must be atoned for accordingly.
According to the Estonian media outlet Delfi, GPS jamming over the Baltic states and the Gulf of Finland comes from a secret military complex in the Kaliningrad region. One of its tasks is to analyze NATO countries' satellite and other forms of communications. According to secret Russian documents obtained by the Estonian news service, the base in Pioniersky is part of the strategic Tobol electronic warfare network. It includes several surveillance, defense and command systems. Its purpose is to protect Russian satellite communication and navigation systems, but also to weaken the intelligence activities of NATO countries. The generated interference can be directed not only at satellite positioning systems such as GPS and Galileo, but also at the Starlink satellite communications system. 19 kilometers. This is how far away Latvia is from completing the barrier on its border with Russia. The reason? Heavy rainfalls are making it impossible for the machinery and materials to reach remote marshy areas of the construction site. As the Telegraph warns that Putin and Lukashenko may be orchestrating a new migration crisis, the question now is, will Latvia make it on time? Natalia Komarov reports.
Prolonged heavy rainfall is forcing delays in the construction of a barrier along Latvia's borders with Russia and Belarus. It has been raining almost non-stop since May. The terrain is full of marshes, forests and now mud.
In my long service, this is probably the first summer like this. Even the spring had better weather. Sometimes we have to pull someone out of the mud.
Latvia, as well as Lithuania, Estonia and Poland, have been strengthening their eastern borders since Belarus and Russia launched a campaign of trafficking thousands of migrants to spark a migration crisis within the European Union. The Latvian section of the border will remain vulnerable to illegal crossings until the skies clear up and the work can continue.
That is one of only 2 access points over a 10-kilometer stretch where you can drive in by car. You can cover those kilometers on foot to get to the worksite, but delivering materials is a detail that sometimes causes delays in the work.
Only 19 kilometers of construction remain, with 250 kilometers already completed. As soon as the terrain dries up, heavy machinery will be able to reach the most remote areas.
Every morning, our project managers wake up and the first thing they do is check the weather, what it's like today and what it will be like next week. We keep track, monitor the situation, and hope for the weather to stabilize.
There is a sense of urgency to complete the barrier on NATO's eastern border. Ukrainian intelligence has recently warned that Minsk and Moscow are preparing to launch a new hybrid campaign, ramping up the numbers of migrants funneled into Europe. For TVP World, Natalia Komarov.
Now, adequate signals are coming from Iran regarding a significant Armenia-Azerbaijan peace and transit agreement brokered by the United States. This is according to independent Armenian journalist Robert Ananyan. In a post on X, Ananyan said that Iran believes the Trump route does not block its road to the north, Europe, but is rather concerned that American and Armenian companies will build the road. Ananyan based his statement on the Iranian president's recent comment that the demand of the Islamic Republic have been taken into account when it comes to the issue of this particular route. The journalist also recalled the Iranian foreign minister's words, who welcomed the deal and said that Iran is in constant consultation with both Armenia and Azerbaijan. Ananyan went on to explain that these rather positive signals come after extremely aggressive statements from Iran about the deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan in recent days. Iran's deputy parliamentary speaker has called the Zangezur corridor a key element of the recent peace treaty, which connects Azerbaijan to its territory of Nakhchivan, a corridor of war. The Spanish town of Fuente de la Piedra resumed the breeding of thousands of flamingo chicks following a 2-year drought that significantly impacted the area. Volunteers gathered at the nearby nature reserve to attach identifiers to approximately 600 flamingo chicks, facilitating their tracking as they are relocated to various nature reserves around the globe.
Just like the rest of the Mediterranean wetlands, the droughts and the extraction of water is really a threat to Puente de Piedra, as well as, the other one. Look at Doñana, the most important wetland practically in Europe, and it's dry for the first time last year. So there's a lot of threats that we need to worry about with the wetlands that the flamingos use. The thing is, with flamingos, they can be very numerous, but they're very dependent on small areas. So like here in Spain, the ones that breed in Fuente de Piedra, they can't even eat here all the time. But it's the only really safe place they have to breed. So it's a very important spot.
And that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and please stay with us here on TVP World.